Hey, welcome aboard in what is turning out to be another of several videos on the Leica D-Lux 8. I thought it might be useful to see and discuss the menu settings that I run on mine. So let's get started. So here we go again. I'm going to show you the menu options that I run on my little Leica D-Lux 8. Now this video would get quite exhaustive if I explained everything, what light metering modes are and what focus modes are and all those things. I can certainly dig into those in the comments, leave a comment if you'd like to see me dig into any of those specific settings and talk about the different varieties. I'm really just going to go through today and talk about the settings that I run and the way, for what I do, for the way I take pictures. And hopefully that'll be interesting for you. I expect, probably a lot of questions and a lot of comments because everybody sets their cameras up differently. But looking forward to interacting with you in the comment section, and let's get started. So on the outside of the body, there are a few available settings. On the lens, aperture, and shutter, you will find the typical A's and A's for automatic modes. Setting the A on the shutter speed, of course, puts you in aperture priority mode. The camera will look at the aperture that you have selected on the lens and then calculate the appropriate shutter speed. Your ISO can be auto or a selected ISO speed. And if you set the A on the lens, then that puts you in shutter priority mode. And the camera calculates everything based on the shutter speed selection. If you put both of them in A, that puts the camera in full auto mode. And if you combine that with auto ISO, as I said, then you're letting the camera do all of the work. No A's selected, right? If you're not selecting an A here or on the lens, that puts you in manual mode. And then you're in control of everything. And if you go to a selected ISO and you're using manual mode, you're kind of shooting just like you did with an old film camera, picking an ISO speed, a shutter speed, and an aperture speed. I have to interject and say a word about manual mode because I think it's an entertaining thing to me that, I come from a film background where I shot on 35mm film cameras forever with manual focus and hopefully some light metering on the later cameras and, setting ISO to a single setting. And I think it's funny that all these years later, people are buying these expensive cameras with basically, supercomputers and AI inside them to help aid them in shooting pictures. And what they want to do is shoot in manual mode. And I think that's funny, I guess it's a badge of honor or something that I know how to shoot in manual mode and I know how to control the camera. And there certainly are times, I shoot mostly in aperture priority mode. And I want to control the effect, right? The artistic effect of the photo through depth of field and some other things. But really, I'm not longing to shoot in manual mode. I bought this camera that has all this thinking in it. And I want to let that camera do some of the heavy lifting. So there are definitely times when, you do want to go full manual mode. But, don't be overly proud and don't buy an expensive camera and not let it do any work, right? So whether you're aperture priority or shutter priority or any other setting, right, there's a time and a place. But like I said, I shoot aperture priority probably 90% of the time. I was really shocked the other day. I was at an event and there was a professional photographer's wedding, and she's a fairly well-known wedding photographer, and so I was watching her and, you know, sneaking peeks at her camera every once in a while. But I was really surprised that most of the time she was shooting on full auto. And letting the camera do all of the work. Now, she would certainly switch out of that for specific shots, but it really got me thinking about, gosh, here's somebody who, you know, takes a ton of pictures for a living, and she's letting the camera do all the work, shooting in full auto. So don't be afraid to let the camera do some of the work. Put it in one of the priority modes, and just makes life a lot easier. Just my 2 cents on that.
Okay, so here we have the Leica D-Lux 8, and you start off, of course, like this, and when you hit the menu button on the bottom, the first thing it does is take you to this quick menu. So this quick menu is kind of neat because it gives you access to whatever you need to do here, and you can set up all these fields for yourself. And the touch screen, you can go in here, you know, and touch whatever you want in some of these categories, and set these to however you want to set them. So it's really handy to be able to take these menu settings and be able to set them up so they're custom to however you like your camera to be. Which is handy. So right out of the gate, this quick menu for Leica is so great. I mean, it's what I think is the best in the business. The whole menu system is just very simple. And of course, you've got a quick menu for video, or for photo. I mean, you can see up top that's highlighted. Sorry, my finger's getting in the way. Or you can hit video, and you can set those same quick menu for video. So they're not the same. You can set up whatever quick choices you want for video, or whatever quick choices you want for photo. So that's one touch of the menu button. Then when you hit the menu again, that actually takes you into the menu pages. And you can see across the top here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 menu pages. And you can scroll through those by using the scroll wheel, by using the arrows. And when you get to the bottom, it takes you to the next one, to page 2. And then when you get to the bottom of page 2, it takes you to 3, 4, 5. And one of the cool things is you can loop back around and go from 5 back to page 1. If you ever want to exit the menu mode, just half press the shutter. That's the easiest way to get out of the menu. So press 1, press 2, we're into page 1. So you can see on these that they've also got little arrows to the side on the ones that are selectable. And so I typically, some of them you can hit the center button here to get into, and then hit menu to come back. I tend to just use the arrows. So this first one is drive mode. On this little guy, I tend to shoot single. It's no powerhouse when it comes to continuous shooting. Self timer, this is where you turn the self timer on. It's got a 2 and a 12-second self timer. You just hit that. I turn that on when I need it, which isn't very often. Going into focusing now, here are the focus modes. And again, you see another arrow to the right. So that means I can come in here. So autofocus single or continuous, or intelligent autofocus, which the camera makes a decision for you. I'm never super comfortable with that. So I usually shoot autofocus single. And then here again, autofocus mode. So this is just how you want the focus to work, whether it's multi-field, which is a very broad area, spot, field, zone, tracking, eye and face recognition. Tracking works okay in this camera. It's not super good, but it works okay. I tend to stay in this field mode unless I'm shooting black and white and maybe I'm shooting silhouettes or something, or some huge contrast area where I want to meter either for the light or the shadow. If that's the case, I'll go to the spot metering which just gives you a much smaller meter area. And the way I would do that, let's say I want a silhouette. First of all, I'd go into manual mode if I was shooting silhouette, and then I would meter for the brightest area and hold the shutter button down halfway, and then come back and recompose. And that way that meters the brightness, which makes the person dark. So that's kind of a scenario where I would use spot, but I tend mostly to keep it on just this field. It's a good kind of middle of the road metering. Focus aids. These are things that you can set to help you focus. I have auto magnification on, so if I'm doing manual focus, it'll zoom in to a little window so I can see better what I'm focusing. I have focus peaking on red. I'm in autofocus now, so that's not popping up. And autofocus assist lamp. This is just that lamp that when you're shooting in the dark, it blinks to try to give the camera more light to focus in. I usually keep that off just because it's a little annoying. And again, you can see I'm in this selection here, and I want to come out to the last level. That's here. And then I could come out, to the third level. But let's keep going through this. Autofocus mode. Again, we talked about field, focus aids. Touch autofocus. This is if you want to use this back panel to move the focus spot around. I use that when I'm shooting portraits or when I'm on a tripod. Other than that, I turn it off because this camera is so small that I tend to, accidentally touch this and the focus point will jump all the way up to here, and then I got to move it all the way back down. So I tend to keep that touch focus off. So you can do either touch autofocus or touch autofocus plus release, where it will actually take the picture. So if you had that in release, you would hit the spot where you want it to focus, and the camera would shoot the picture as well. But again, I keep that off most of the time. The touch screen still works for selections and things. It just doesn't work for focusing. So that's how I prefer it. And this is just being able to see it in EVF. So I've got that off as well. Okay, exposure metering. This is just a couple different ones. Again, you can spot exposure meter, and that's actually kind of what I was talking about before. A center weighted or a multi-field. I just run multi-field. It seems to work the best with this little camera. This is if you want to preset exposure compensation. I keep that at 0 as a preset and just use the knob up here to adjust when I'm in an automatic mode. I typically run auto ISO, but you can see here that you can pick all the ISOs all the way up to 25,000, and you can actually run this little camera right up to that if you want. So I keep it in auto, again, letting the camera do some of the work. And then if I go to the next page, I can get a little more specific about the auto ISO settings. So here I can say that I only want to go to 12,500, and this is where I usually keep it. And I want the shutter speed limit to only go as low as 1/25th. Some people set this all the way down to 1/60th, but so when the autofocus is making those, or the auto ISO is making those calculations, it's using these factors in its calculation. So you can set that wherever you want. White balance, I keep on auto unless, maybe I'm out shooting a whole bunch of landscapes in the daytime. I'll switch to daylight. But you've got all your typical choices here. Again, I feel good about this camera running in auto white balance. File format, I typically on this camera, because I'm shooting a lot of black and white, I shoot JPEG and RAW. So like I say, with my black and white high contrast JPEGs, it takes such good JPEGs. I use the straight JPEGs most of the time, but if I do have to go back and make a bunch of tweaks where I need a bunch of dynamic range, I've got the RAW file there. But there certainly is an argument for this camera to just shoot straight JPEGs all the time. Either way, if you've got JPEG selected, either as a combo JPEG and RAW or straight JPEGs, your JPEG settings are here. So you can set your JPEG resolution to a 16, an 8 megapixel, or a 4 megapixel. I usually just keep it on large. This camera can handle it. Noise reduction, I just run right in the middle at medium. And then film style. So here's where I typically go with this. So typically I am shooting. So standard is the standard Leica feel. Vivid amps up the colors a little bit. Natural, kind of brings a little bit more of a less saturated look. And then there's straight monochrome. But what I usually run is this monochrome high contrast. So you can select that, and then that will be basically your JPEG setting. But in addition to these settings, you could come in here and, I could go down to my monochrome high contrast and even make more contrast or more sharpness. So you can, not quite as handy as a Fuji, but you can customize these JPEG settings a little bit here, which is nice. So that's something to play around with. Highlight and shadow, again, these are just custom settings. You can go high contrast, low contrast, brighten up the shadows. I just keep this in standard, but you can see you can basically make your own film recipes. Not quite as great as Fuji, but you can really influence some of these. This one is intelligent dynamic range. I keep this on auto. I don't know why you would change this, but you can come in here and set different dynamic range. I've never really played with this. I've always kept it on auto. Not sure why that's in the menu. I'm sure there's some reason. The scene mode, this is where you can set it at, again, PASM, program auto, or aperture priority, shutter priority, and then manual. That's those. And so you can pick others too, like portrait, landscape, night scenery. There's a bunch of them in here. I keep this on PASM because that's just kind of the standard way cameras are set up, and that makes it good for me. OIS is optical image stabilization, which this camera has. And I keep that always on. There's also a panning mode that stabilizes it when you pan back and forth. I don't see too much of a difference in that. So again, I just keep this on auto or on for image stabilization. On shutter type, you can go mechanical, electronic, and hybrid. Of course, this camera goes up to 1/2000 just in the mechanical shutter. You can exceed that in electronic shutter, and I won't get into the specs on that. You can read about that online. But basically, I go with hybrid. So if it needs to really get up there, the camera has the ability to engage the hybrid shutter when it wants to. I'll skip the flash settings, but basically. Flash settings are pretty similar to any other camera. Exposure preview. This is just these two settings. You can take manual mode out of here if you want, but again, again on those, I am running the PASM. Let me get back there. So keep that on PASM. Auto review is just how long after you take the picture it stays on the back panel. A lot of people don't like that distraction or that energy draw, so they'll turn it off. I still think it's handy to look down there every once in a while. So you can set the time or leave it even all the way, always on if you really want to. Noise reduction for long exposures I leave on. The thumb wheel. So this is just how you want this thumb wheel to behave. Now I keep it in auto, which means however I switch from aperture priority or shutter priority, it has a logical function. Like in aperture priority, this becomes exposure compensation, which makes total sense. So I leave it in auto, but if you really wanted to, you could set it for a full-time function there. So leaving it in auto is how I have it set. User profile. So anytime you have the camera set up, you can set it however you want, a certain way, and then you can come in and make a user profile. So a lot of times I'll make a regular profile, and then I'll make a monochrome profile, and this will save all the settings, aperture, priority, etc., etc. All of those things can come into play here. And the way you do that is you get the camera set up the way you want it, and you go into manage profiles here, and then you save that as a profile. And what that does is that will populate this into profile 1. It'll ask you profile 1, profile 2, profile 3. Unfortunately, you can't customize the names as far as I know, so you just kind of got to remember what you think are your profiles, your main and your secondary and your tertiary there. So I encourage you to save profiles. It makes things really easy, and just another thing you can have the camera do for you. And you can see that flashing light means our battery's running low. Capture assistance, these are all the things, of course, you've seen. I have grids on. I don't use zebra or level gauge on this little guy. I do have the histogram going. I don't show clipping, but all of those are capture assistance that the camera will do for you. Display settings. This is, again, if you want the electric viewfinder only, the LCD only, or the auto switching between both, which I do. So if you come up here and put your eye in front of this, it turns the back panel off, and then when it's away, it comes back on. That's how I have that set. I have it high to the sensitivity because I always want it switching back and forth nicely. LCD brightness, this is just basically how bright you want this back panel display. Leica photos, this is just when you're using the Leica Photo app. So you can have this connectivity on all the time if you want. You'll see a little blue dot down here going on and off as it tries to connect. I typically just turn this on when I want to use the Leica Photos app. Hey, good timing, there it goes. So I typically leave that off. Sometimes it has a little bit of a mind of its own, but you can see how that works. Going to the last page, this is to format your memory card. This is an interesting little thing, camera setting. It's just kind of a grab bag of things for file names. If you want to reset how it numbers, power saving. I have power saving right now, just turned to always on because I want this to stay on. But typically I have this set at 2 minutes. And then acoustic signal, whether or not you want it to make noise as you press the shutter and focus, and then you come down to date and time. Then we've also got the camera information, which is really about the firmware level you have, license information, all that kind of stuff. Nothing really to set there. Languages, and then if you ever have a big problem, you can reset the entire camera here. So that's running through the entire menu system. As you can see with Leica, it's really a simple system. And again, if you ever want to get out, you just half press the shutter button, and this first click takes you to this quick menu, which you should be able to get almost anything, along with being able to program this button and these two buttons. It's a really nice and simple setup on this little guy. So that's the way I have my Leica D-Lux 8 set up. I think it's pretty basic. There's a lot of things you can move into and program with. I encourage you to experiment, right? And play with all these settings and see what works for you. You know, I shoot a lot of black and white, so I go with that monochrome high contrast in the menu. I'll often shoot JPEG and RAW because I'd say probably 60-70% of the time the JPEGs out of this little Leica are really good and just take a little bit of tweaking. And the other great thing is when you do put it in that profile of high contrast black and white, you're seeing on the screen and in the viewfinder the black and white image and the JPEGs coming out to that image. So it's truly like shooting black and white, whereas if I just put this in black and white, or I'm just shooting in color and I turn color to black and whites later, it works, but somehow it doesn't feel as authentic as, you know, seeing the whole thing and viewing it in black and white from the very beginning. Hopefully some good conversations in the comments.
If you liked what you saw today, please give me a like and subscribe. Every little bit helps to continue to grow the channel, and more importantly, continue to grow the conversation and the kind of social platform that YouTube could be in discussing a lot of these things after the video, which I think is really valuable. As always, thanks for spending some time with me today. Don't forget to get out there and practice when even if you just got an hour, run around the neighborhood and do a little practice. It all helps. And I'll see you next time.